MP3 media wave on your mobile and on your smart speaker.
And
It's Christmas 2025.
Epic Sport, which demands an epic voiceover. And actually has an interesting story as well. It all started back in 1871 when Scotland beat England in the very first international rugby match. The other home nations were a bit jealous, wanted in on the action, and after England played Wales in 1882, they all decided to hold an annual festival of international rugby, or the Home International Championship, which kicked off a year after. Now, the first decade was dominated by England and Scotland until Wales finally won in 1893 and Ireland a year later. After years of dipping in and out of the championship, France was invited to join full-time in 1910. But because France isn't a home nation, they had to give it a rebrand and settle on the Five Nations. But France were actually kicked out of the tournament in 1931. They were accused of paying players when rugby was still strictly an amateur sport. They had to wait years to be let back in, but after World War II, the Five Nations resumed. Didn't always run smoothly though, like in 1973 when all 5 teams won 2 matches and lost 2 matches. Now, because they didn't do points difference at the time, they just decided that everyone was the champion. It's like trying to keep kids happy, you know, the whole "you're all winners." In the years following, other teams in Europe started to get better at rugby and actually got to a stage where they were regularly beating teams in the Five Nations. In 1997, Italy beat Scotland, France and Ireland home and away. So 2 years later, the Five Nations invited Italy in, creating the Six Nations as we know it. In recent years, there have been calls to expand the tournament further to other European teams. Georgia and Portugal have been prime candidates to join of late. It's also been suggested there could be 2 tiers with promotion and relegation to promote growth of the sport in Europe. But the existing nations are a bit reluctant. So for now, it looks like the Six Nations, or Six Nations, or Sei Nazioni, is here to stay.
talkSPORT Express, the weekly international.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a slightly truncated version of Trans-Europe Express. Just 2 hours tonight. What joy to hear my old radio spar, Darren Goff, spouting Darren stuff just now about the cricket. Lovely to hear from him. And, of course, my other great radio spar, Andy Brassell, is with me, Danny Kelly, here on Trans-Europe Express tonight. We've got a lot to get through in just 120 minutes of safety net-free radio. We'll have all the major stories from across the continent, of course we will. Mbappe watch, a review of some things that happened in the Champions League as the English teams largely fought back from a previously terrible week in that competition. Tim Vickler will join us from South America, of course he will, and we'll keep you across everything that's happening late at night at Alexandra Palace as the early stages of the PDC World Darts Championship continue to unfold. Welcome one, welcome all. I normally say it's going to be a belting 3 hours. It's going to be a belting 2 hours. This is Trans-Europe Express. Good evening, Andy.
Good evening, Danny. How are you?
Well, allowing for local difficulties in football, very much looking forward to reviewing the European scene. And why don't we start with this?
Derrière le Paris Saint-Germain, Mbappé. Et Mbappé.
Little give and go. Mbappe's in. Oh, it's 2-2. He scored twice in 2 minutes.
Tête de Kylian Mbappé. Allez, Kylian.
Yeah, Mbappe watch at the top of this 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the morning show for you all. And after Real Madrid's defeat during the week, which we'll come on to in the Champions League, Andy, today they won 2-1 to Alaves. And it does seem, and it's the most, here comes my prize for the most obvious statement ever made on national radio. When Mbappe is fit, Real Madrid are a better team.
Yeah, I think that's very much the conclusion from this week, because I think we have to go back to when we started this time last week, when we were talking about their 2-0 defeat at home to Celta Vigo, in which Kylian Mbappe didn't bail them out for once. He wasn't fit enough to bail them out against Manchester City in the week. And going into that game at Manchester City, such was the fallout of the game against Celta that a lot of people around Real Madrid thought that defeat against City might be curtains for Xabi Alonso. Now, I don't think it was for a number of reasons. One of them being that Real Madrid played pretty well and the players looked as if they still backed the coach, particularly in that first half hour. I thought they were really good, and that they never quit, even when Manchester City got on top of them a little bit. But if you just look at the game itself against Manchester City, Real Madrid had loads more possession, they had loads more shots, and yet Thibaut Courtois was by far the busier goalkeeper. And that tells you everything you need to know about Real Madrid and Manchester City. Now, it's felt for a long time as if Mbappe has been propping them up. He did nothing to dissuade us from that point of view by scoring an absolute rip snorter for the opening goal at Alaves tonight, which always looked like a banana skin because they have a load of injured defenders. Dean Huyson coming back, but only fit enough for the bench. A situation where they have someone who never played before playing at left back tonight, because they're so short of defensive options. Of course, both Fran Garcia and Alvaro Carreras suspended after they were sent off last week against Celta. So, yeah, I think at a moment like this, it is hard not to lean into saying that Mbappe makes all the difference, because he does. Yeah, I mean,
it's as I say, it's a self-evident truth. But he's another one, a professional footballer who's these days, and if you think about the upcoming World Cup, would be required to play the thick end and probably beyond the thick end of 60 games. No matter how fantastic well looked after you are, sports scientists, in-house chefs and all the rest of it, it's just a lot to ask to be at 100% peak all of those times. I thought we should, because we're going to review some of the other Champions League games a little later in the programme. It was interesting what you said, that City converted inferior possession stats, shots of goal, etc., into a win. We might be seeing something new here from Manchester City, because today at Crystal Palace, they were absolutely out-XG'd, outshot and all the rest of it by the South Londoners, but came away comfortable winners. I suppose, just as Mbappe brings a certain something to PSG, you could argue that it's the goal scoring of and the presence of Erling Haaland that allows City to turn perhaps less domination than they used to into decent results.
Yeah, that is their jam this season, isn't it? Pep Guardiola has gone fully Premier League, and I think it's a really interesting development, and maybe it's an interesting development in the Champions League as well. But I guess the other way of reading that is that if Mbappe had been present on Wednesday night, maybe some of those chances would be taken, and maybe we'd be drawing very, very different conclusions from it. But Mbappe is, I guess, because Haaland is such an incredible pure goal scorer, and a lot of people listening to this will see him every week, and maybe not necessarily Kylian Mbappe. I think a lot of people would answer you very quickly when they talked about the best goal scorer in the world at the moment. But the fact is, Kylian Mbappe, if you talked about tiredness and potential tiredness, if you packed in this season now, the numbers are great. We're talking about 26 club goals, 9 in the Champions League, 19 now in La Liga, and of course closing on Cristiano Ronaldo's record for the calendar year that he set back in 2013. Though he might fall just short. But I guess the other things to note from the game against Alaves tonight, beyond Mbappe, is that Vinicius having been booed during the week at the Bernabeu.
Yes.
Xabi Alonso wasn't, which I thought was quite interesting, but Vinicius was, and I thought he played quite poorly in that game. He was really, really good tonight. Really good shift out of him. Created the winning goal for Rodrigo, and it's been a big week for Rodrigo as well. We've talked a lot of times, haven't we, Danny, about how he's really a Xabi Alonso type of player. And maybe because they've been a little bit stretched, he's ended up
Valverde, I
playing.
presume, had to go back to play full back. Is that why he was starting?
Exactly. He's at right back. He was always, as you say, Valverde was the sort of defensive right-sided attacker of choice for Carlo Ancelotti. And now you've seen Rodrigo, how much he can do off the ball as well. So there's no reason why he shouldn't play more and more and more after Franco Mastantuono had his start to the season. So, I think he's earned his place in Xabi Alonso's lineup. And wouldn't it be interesting if we go into the second half of the season and those big three are there along with Jude Bellingham? Look, I think if you look at the front half of the team, it kind of sorts itself out at the moment, doesn't it? It's just defensive, which is the issue, very much as it was for Carlo Ancelotti last season.
Yeah, some of this is to do with the injuries. Andy, you say that Xavi was in danger and now he's not quite in so much danger. Why is this not the time to get rid of him if that's what some of the hierarchy feel? I mean, I get that the rejigged schedule for European football means that all managers can sort of point to a month ahead, and it's the weekends of the weeks of the 20th, 21st and 28th of January for these Champions League games, and to me that's kind of allows a bit of staring at the horizon for managers. I'm not talking about Tottenham as well,
Maybe, but I think even though there were reasons, and there have been reasons for Real Madrid's dropping of several points in La Liga recently, and they've dropped 9 in the last 5 match days before today. If they'd have lost to Alaves, I think he would have been in big trouble and maybe even gone. And in turn, maybe that affects what's going on at Liverpool. Again, Arne Slot has had a few little results this week that have bought him a little bit more time at the very least, and it feels as if that is the pattern that Xabi Alonso's in. But who knows if there had been a better option for Liverpool, maybe they would have come to a decision on a Slot. Who knows? But I think it's globally healthy for everyone if we continue as is, if we see if there's a little bit more of a chance for Xabi Alonso. And I guess the thing is that if we're working out what's best for the club at the moment, what's going to continue the situation of them at least being competitive this season, I think the players know after this week that maybe it's Alonso as well. And I think the thing that was most notable tonight, not just about that great performance by Vinny Jr., but who had a big hug when he came off the pitch? Alonso and Vinny Jr. Okay, it was for the cameras. We know that, but
sure.
We know that's a huge thing at Real Madrid. But the fact that it didn't feel inauthentic and it felt sincere, at least in "I respect you" terms, I feel that's very important for Real Madrid and the next little bit of their season.
Yeah, I do. Thank you very much, dear. We'll go over to the darts in just a second. But Andy, I couldn't let this programme where we love our football so much go. And I know it's not our job to cover Scottish football. That's what the main station does anyway. But it would be churlish not to say a huge congratulations to St Mirren Football Club. Their victory over Celtic today in the Scottish League Cup is the very thing that I think Scottish football needs. And every football league needs this kind of thing because it provides, as I said on social media after the game finished, it provides all of us who pay our money, invest our emotion, waste our lives following these football teams. It provides us with the one commodity that the rich owners of these clubs can't necessarily buy for us, and that is hope. So I find that, much as, sort of a second-hand fan of Celtic through my father, but honest to goodness, that victory for St Mirren, just fantastic. So well done, the Buddies. Meanwhile, in North London, high up in the higher parts of North London, the PDC World Darts Championship continues apace. Always a great feature of the Christmas season. Let's see how it's going tonight. Let's join for the first time this evening our commentator, Adam Bridge.
Hiya, Danny. Yep, it's the final game of day 4, and it's James Hurrell who has the advantage right now against Stowe Bunce. He took the first set. Bunce, who's appeared here twice before, had never won a set, but he managed to level things up at 1 apiece. But Hurrell has picked up the third. All 3 sets going against the darts. Bunce with the advantage in the early stages of the 4th set of this game. It's been some nights. Stephen Bunting scraping through. Wesley Plazer getting a good win as well. And a terrific story earlier from Darren Ice Cold Beveridge, who needed to win in an attempt to try and keep his tour card. 2 more wins and he'll manage it, but he's safely into round 2 as well. Final game of the night then is in the 4th set. Hurrell leads by 2 sets to 1 right now.
The PDC World Darts Championship update on talkSPORT with Village Hotels. Hit the bullseye this Christmas with a darty party at Village. Enjoy flights of festive fun with our interactive darts lanes. Available at locations across the UK.
Yeah, I've got to say, I've got the darts on in front of me here as well, Andy. And quite apart from having a great name, Stowe Bunce, the American darter that's playing there against Hurrell, he looks like he's part of an American thrash metal band that's reformed for one last go at the stadiums and the basketball courts. Absolutely fabulous looking man in bright, and I mean fuchsia pink trousers. This is the stuff that elevates Trans-Europe Express beyond everything else here on the late night radio on talkSPORT. And next we'll be moving on to everything else that happened away from Real Madrid in Spain. Yeah, now the legendary Celtic manager Martin O'Neill returns to talkSPORT tomorrow morning after his fantastically successful spell in charge at Celtic Park, where he won 7 of his 8 games in charge, including that 3-1 win at Feyenoord. He's back with Jim White and Simon Jordan following Celtic's League Cup final defeat to St Mirren. That's Celtic legend Martin O'Neill on talkSPORT. Jim White and Simon Jordan tomorrow morning from 10 a.m. Now, Andy, I've got some updates on Stowe Bunce with his brilliant name and his brilliant look. He is known as the Neon Nightmare, so that all makes sense, doesn't it? He could even be in a band called Neon Nightmare. And it says here that apart from being a pretty full-time darts player, he's also, quote, in Virginia, in the United States, a crane manager. I presume that means mechanical lifting devices and not those lovely birds. But he manages cranes for a living, and he seems like a very, very good addition to my knowledge of the dart scene. More from Adam Bridge as that game, the last of the evening, comes to a conclusion. Let's turn our attention, Andy, to Spain then. Camp Nou drop points, we're calling it, because Camp Nou, as the locals call Barcelona's ground, is amazingly, since they've gone back there, turned into a fortress.
Yeah, that's right. Continued their run of wins since they got in there by beating Osasuna yesterday, as you would expect. Maybe you wouldn't have expected it to be quite as cagey as it was. It took them a long time to get there. They were into the last 20 minutes. By the time that Rafinha opened the scoring, he scored both goals. And since he's been back at full fitness, he hasn't missed a beat. I mean, we've talked before about the possibility of, in this completely stuffed football calendar, maybe sometimes you need an injury to make you get the rest that you need. And Rafinha is certainly an advert for that theory, because since he's come back from a couple of months out, he has been absolutely flying, leading the team on and off the pitch, scoring vital goals, as we've seen again. Something else to note, Pedri, who assisted on the opening for him, has matched his assist record for a single season already with 5. He was also played his 150th La Liga game with Barcelona and beating Leo Messi, his record of being the youngest player to play 150 La Liga games for Barcelona by some 100+ days, which is, wow, is pretty amazing. I bet Real Madrid feel a bit daft about turning him down all those years ago.
Well, I guess that I'm in a kind of generous mood to 99.999% of all football teams in the world tonight. I guess you can't tell when people are teenagers what might be coming down the pike for them. So, meanwhile, Atletico Madrid, who they're not in the worst form, but they do appear they sort of handicap themselves. Every now and then it looks like they're trying to get out of the race for the title, and they're relying on late goals and escape acts to see them remain in the race.
Yeah, they're giving it a good go to play themselves out of the title race at the moment, as you say. They beat Valencia 2-1 yesterday, but it wasn't easy at all. Hugo Duro, our favourite, he hit the crossbar in the first 20 seconds for the visitors. And bear in mind, this is not a great Valencia side, but when they equalised Koke's goal with a brilliant first goal in Spain for Lucas Beltran, it was totally deserved, and they needed an outstanding goal by Antoine Griezmann, who'd come on as substitute. Of course, the mullet has gone, which is pretty sad. But
yeah, the way is sad.
Yeah, the way he gathered with one touch and smashed in with the second was absolutely vintage Griezmann, and they really deserved it. And if we're looking for signs that Atletico have still got a bit of old Atletico about them, the way they saw this game out with Gio Simeone, the manager's son, like holding the ball in the corner, Dad would have been so proud, I'm sure. I don't care how many goals and assists he's got this season. I mean, that is the moment that would have brought a tear to the old man's eye, I think.
Andy, let me ask you a personal question, what with Christmas coming up and everything. If Antoine Griezmann had put the spare hair from his mullet up for sale for, say, a charity, would you have bought it?
Yeah, I would have bought it to go alongside in our still pending Trans-Europe Express Museum, the Hamburg clock. I mean, those are the two items that our museum's really missing. I feel if we got those for Christmas, we'll be getting that off the ground in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, because they've been absolute stalwarts of the show since we started a decade ago, banging on about the Hamburg clock and the rear part of Antoine Griezmann's hair. Absolutely. here's well, I suppose in the age of global warming, but also just because Spain is a very large country, so it's not always baked in the sunshine which we associate with it on these islands. Villarreal have been doing so well; they'll have been very, very upset, I guess, to have their momentum, if not halted, certainly staggered by having their game called off today.
Yeah, severe weather warnings in Valencia, where they were meant to be playing Levante away. Levante on a terrible run in the bottom club, so it felt like a banker for Villarreal, this one. And they were unable to play it because of the severe weather warnings. Just as the game was going to be happening, there was going to be torrential downpours running up to meters and meters and meters over the last 24 hours. So it was binned. And who knows what sort of shape Levante will be in by the time that's replayed. I don't think they've got a terrible squad. I don't think they're the worst squad in the division. They've got some good players. You think of Ete Young. They've still got El Comandante, Jose Maria Jimenez on the bench as well. So look, they've got so many options, and I'll be interested to see how that pans out when that's played a little bit later on. Valencia does, of course, have its own microclimate, which normally means it's absolutely beautiful, whatever the time of year. But when it rains, it really rains.
Yeah, listen, let's get back to the Alexander Palace. The last day of the game is over, and I fear it might be curtains for my new hero, Stowe Bunce. To find out if that's true, here's Adam Bridge.
Yeah, the Neon Nightmare has had a nightmare, really, Stowe Bunce. He had a chance to make it 2 sets apiece, but James Hurrell has wrapped up victory in 4 sets. The man from Banbury, he'll go through to round 2 to take on Dirk van Dijvenbode or Andy Bartons, who meet later in the week. Hurrell was expected to win, and he's managed to come through quite comfortably in the end by 3 sets to 1. Then in our final match of day 4, a couple of things to note. Day 5 gets underway tomorrow at 12:30 on talkSPORT 2 and via the Darts YouTube channel as well. And don't miss Paul Lim tomorrow morning on talkSPORT Breakfast with Jeff and Ali. But that's day 4 done, and Ali Pally, another cracking day, but we'll have more darts for you tomorrow.
PDC World Darts Championship update on talkSPORT with Village Hotels. Hit the bullseye this Christmas with a darty party at Village. Enjoy flights of festive fun with our interactive darts lanes, available at locations across the UK.
Yeah, and well done to our darts coverage team for the last day. It's a long, long day there. And they're doing their absolute brilliant job bringing you all the latest from the darts. But in these early stages, when there's just so many games, it's like a 15-hour day. So those of you who have very difficult jobs will probably be playing small violins now. But I'm telling you, well done to my colleagues there. Andy, returning to Spain and specifically to the Basque country, Bilbao lost 2-0 at Celta. You can tell me about Nico Williams' penalty, but they are not the most obviously poorly performing team in the Basque country, because Real Sociedad have got so loads of good players, just not getting going at all.
No, I mean, at least Athletic did beat Atletico last week, so that was some bit of twitching and showing that they're still happening. But a really poor penalty from Nico Williams today, saved by Radu, which kind of was the low point of their 2-0 defeat at Celta, which was another really below par performance from a team that has had a lot of injuries. We can't get away from that, but
sure.
Is having a really poor season in the Champions League as well as in the La Liga. But look, Real Sociedad, I think you look at them and they are the team that sort of sticks out like a sore thumb in the bottom 6, because we know they've lost some big players in recent years. They've still got a lot of big players, and they went down at home to Girona yesterday. And if there's one game one defeat that's really going to finish a coach off, that's going to be it. So Sergio Francisco is no more. A difficult job for him. They hoped he would follow Imanol because he'd taken the C team, he'd taken the B team before, so he would be good at bringing through these young players. Just hasn't happened for him in this season. And Girona with the final nail in the coffin.
Do we know who's going to replace Francisco?
No, it's that they're using the boot room, and the current B team manager is stepping up to take his place for the last 2 games before we get to the winter break.
Okay, which takes us to Stars of the Week. Why don't you start, Andy?
Okay, I will. Love a Nigerian centre-forward. Have not always loved Akor Adams, if I'm being perfectly honest. I never really quite saw it when he was in France with Montpellier. Sevilla, who we know have got no money, spent quite a bit of money on him by their standards. Thick end of 10 million euros. But he started motoring. He scored the opening goal and provided an assist in the 4-0 win over Oviedo. I mean, once he got the first one, they may as well taken the rest of the afternoon off, because Oviedo haven't scored for 6 games. They haven't scored since the end of October, which is pretty bad and looks grim for them. Of course, they've got a lot of fans all over the world from various share issues in the past. But Sevilla showing just why they'll, not trouble the European places, but they will keep their heads above water.
Okay, well, my star of the week in Spain is Omar Mascarell. I don't know which order to put these teams, and he has played for Real Madrid, and he's also played for the mighty Schalke. These days he plies his trade at Mallorca, and if you're going to fall out of that sort of level of clubs, what a great landing spot Mallorca is. He's helped to guide Mallorca out of the bottom 6 in Spain with a 3-1 win against Elche. He scored the goal that put them 2-1 up. One of those chips where the goalkeeper makes such a mistake and you find yourself in such a position compared to his that you've just got to try the audacious long shot, and sure enough it went in. He also assisted the goal to make it 3-1. So Omar is my star of the week there in Spain. Next, we'll be turning to Germany, where Harry Kane continues to head towards all kinds of... In fact, he broke one record, so I'll tell you about that as well. But Bayern Munich didn't have it all their own way. That's next here on Trans-Europe Express. Yeah, the PDC World Darts Championship is underway, as you've been hearing here on the station, and talkSPORT and Pitch Experiences could be sending you there on the 23rd of December. With less than a week left to enter, you and 3 mates could be living it large with platinum seats, fine dining, a complimentary bar and exclusive access to the 501 lounge with Russ the Voice Bray. Then it's straight to your prime arena table for the best view in the house. Get ready for an unforgettable Ali Pali Christmas. Here is how to enter. For your chance to win, just text DARTS, the word DARTS, to 83338. Text costs £2 plus your standard network rate, or you can call 034342 17508. Lines close at 4 p.m. this Thursday. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. It's 18 plus and UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text DARTS to 83338. Do it now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's are at talksport.com, and of course, good luck to you all. So, Andy, our headline for Germany is the Mainz men, after Mainz, bottom of the table, prevented Bayern Munich from continuing their 100% home record this season.
Yeah, they did, and they did a fantastic job. I mean, it's been, I guess, a kind of pivotal week for Mainz. They are the surprise team of last season, finished 6th, were flirting with the Champions League place for a really long time, looked like progressing in the Conference League. But they haven't been able to do anything right this season. It cost them a really good coach in Bo Henriksen, who they didn't really want to dump and didn't really want to leave, but nothing was happening and they were glued to the bottom of the table. They are still bottom of the table, but they go into the last round of fixtures before Christmas in much better shape because having appointed Urs Fischer, who formerly worked miracles with Union Berlin, the Swiss coach, won the Ligue in Switzerland with Brassell as well, has taken over this week. And you think he's on a hide into nothing for this first game. Bayern not dropped a single point at home, and Mainz come within 5-6 minutes of winning the whole shebang. They come from 1-0 down to go 2-1 up, and a really, really interesting afternoon for their young Polish defender, Kasper Podolski, as well, because he scored the equaliser on the stroke of half-time that got them back in it. And once they were 2-1 up, all hands to the pump to try and keep it there. And they looked like they were going to. And then he was kind of sold a bit of a pup by Harry Kane. Look, it was a penalty. He grabbed the shirt. There's no doubt about it. But as soon as Kane felt the shirt getting grabbed, he went on the floor. And we know what Harry Kane does with penalties when they're in the Bundesliga. He doesn't miss them.
Yeah, of course, those of you watching on television will see the pictures of Harry Kane they're putting up while Andy and I discuss this game. I've got to be honest, deep in my heart, I can't get used to him in a red shirt. But Andy, we talked about the form Erling Haaland's in. We talked about the form that Kylian Mbappe is in. I'd just make the point here, because I know it to be true, that goal takes him, I think, to 50 for the calendar year. He has broken his own record that he scored about, I think, 49 about 3 different times for Spurs in different calendar years. So the years are not withering Harry Kane, of course, in that brilliant Bayern team. But we know the rules in Germany. If Bayern slip up, then everybody else behind them must do a gentleman's excuse me. No, after you. No, after you. And that could definitely be said of both Leipzig and Dortmund.
Yeah, they certainly did. And I think we look at Leipzig and the Friday night match that perhaps some of our listeners will have seen away at Union Berlin. And Union had a blip or two in recent weeks, is fair to say. But they were really good, really, really good in this. 3-1 to Union in the end. Really good performance. Christopher Trimmel, sort of turning back the years, the Berlin Beckham with a class assist to get them going as well. And Leipzig, I expected a lot more of them really in the All East game. And then you had Borussia Dortmund today, who are obviously always only a game or two away from a crisis. They led at half time at Freiburg, the team that they always beat. You know, they'd won their last 7 games against Freiburg. They've lost twice against Freiburg in the last 15 years. That's the sort of relationship that the two clubs have. And Dortmund were absolutely battered in the second half. Now, they got away with a 1-1 draw, which to an extent, I think they'll be reasonably pleased with, or perhaps Niko Kovac, as a pragmatist, will be reasonably pleased with. It all sort of happened after a bad pass from Gregor Kobel, sort of caught out Joe Bellingham, and he committed a last man foul to be sent off. And Dortmund in the next 15 minutes had, I think it was 23% of possession. I mean, that really shouldn't be happening, even if they're down to 10 men against Freiburg. Invited that pressure. It took a brilliant goal from Lucas Höhler, a bicycle kick to get Freiburg their point, but it could easily have been a loss for Dortmund. And particularly after a week in which Nico Schlotterbeck, one of their senior players, Germany centre-back, who a lot of people are interested in, including Barcelona, including a couple of English Premier League clubs, including perhaps Real Madrid, it has been suggested. He's out of contract in 2027, so there's very much a sign or get sold imperative next summer, you would expect. He spoke immediately after the draw with Bodo Glimt, and he said, all the players that come on for us just lose the ball constantly, which seemed kind of remarkable thing to say. Now, Lars Ricken, who's in charge there nowadays, he said, well, this shows that he's still really bought in with us, and this shows that he's got great professional standards. And
that's one way of looking at it.
That is one way of looking at it. I'm pretty sure that's not the way that 99% of the people who heard it are looking at it. But you know, it does sort of recall the gif of Jim Carrey from Dumb or Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance, but yeah, I don't know. It feels to me that things are a result or two away from really boiling over again.
Andy, you promised me this week that the game between Eintracht and Augsburg would be at least 6-6, given the number of goals these teams score and concede. So you busted my coupon with the actual result.
Miserable 1-1 draw. And Eintracht Frankfurt, who I love, as you know, I think they've got a really good team. But as people who will have seen them just in the Champions League will be well aware, they love a defensive implosion. Even in losing 2-1 to Barcelona this week, having led the game, that was due to 10 minutes of madness where they let in a couple of goals to Jules Koundé, who had his Lilian Thuram moment from the 1998 World Cup semi. And there was a sense that they'd sort of given away a very, very hard-fought game. Now, going into this game, they conceded 29 goals in 13 Bundesliga games. Bear in mind, they're a Champions League team and a contender to maybe finish in the top three this season. And so it was all a bit back to basics. They beat Augsburg, who recently parted company with Sandro Wagner, another of the many teams in the Bundesliga who have an interim coach at the moment, 1-0, and I felt very let down by the whole experience. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll go with first in stars of the week. But perhaps in a day when I'm pretty fizzing about Spurs, I should pick some of their ex-players. Christian Eriksen these days plays at Wolfsburg. He was an interesting signing. People wondered why he was signed there, given they've got lots of players in that general position. Then you remember that Wolfsburg have got lots of Danish people in their administration. Anyway, he set up Wolfsburg's Patrick Wimmer's goal in a 3-1 win at Mönchengladbach. He doesn't start every game, Christian, but when he plays, he tends to assist. And so far, when he assists, they tend to win. And so he is very much part of a reviving, but not yet fully revived Wolfsburg team. Who is your star of the week, Andy, in Germany?
Talking of surprise signings, I've gone for Sven Mislintat. You might remember him formerly as the director of football at Dortmund, Arsenal. Nearly ended up getting fired from Dortmund the second time after about a fortnight after falling out with everyone. He's practically a swear word at Ajax, but he still keeps getting the jobs, and he's got a new job at Fortuna Düsseldorf now after they parted company with the long-serving Klaus Allofs. They're doing so badly in the Bundesliga's fire. They're in the relegation zone at the moment that they didn't only have to dump the coach, but the director of football. So who knows what's going to happen next with Mislintat at the helm.
Thank you very, very much. I wasn't expected to hear Sven Mislintat as star of the week, so you've startled me there, Andy. We'll talk about Italy next. And what can I tell you? It could be the case that just as we come into the run-up to Christmas, the best team in Italy has finally roused themselves to go top of the table. We'll talk about that next here on Trans-Europe Express. Yeah, Andy, listen, I know we need to talk about Italy in just a second, but you know my plan to educate you about American football.
Yes.
Are you across what's happened with Philip Rivers this week? Let me help you.
Didn't he provide an assist for a touchdown for the first time in about 1,000 days?
Philip Rivers is one of the legendary quarterbacks in American football. He's fifth all-time in passing and touchdown records after years and years and years playing. He retired 5 years ago. An injury crisis at the Indianapolis Colts means that he's been dragged out of retirement at the age of 44, thrown straight onto the pitch today against the Seahawks, and well, into the fourth quarter, he's got the Colts 13-12 ahead. It's an incredible. How can you, a game that physical, how can you just stroll back after 5 years? Okay, I'll play, don't worry about that. And of course, on top of all this, Tom Brady, who's turning out to be a very good, if slightly acerbic commentator, he was asked about what a miracle this was, and he went, because being Tom, he said, "Oh, I don't know, I think I could come back and play now as well." So what a slap in the face to all the young quarterbacks who are earning $40 million a year. Philip Rivers, I'll keep across that one, still ahead with the Colts home to the Seahawks. Right, Andy, let's talk about Italy then. Our headline is Lazio's perfect nine. We'll get on to the Roman team soon, but a really interesting weekend at the top of the tightest league in Europe, which saw Milan drop home points, and Napoli being no good at Udine, and Inter taking advantage. Where do you want to start? Let's start with Milan against Sassuolo.
Yeah, that was the Sunday morning game. And despite 2 goals from Davide Bartesaghi, the teenage left-back, and 2 very good goals as well that suggest that he'll be very much part of things going forward, and that Pervis Estupiñán might be about to be Silvino to his Ashley Cole. We'll have to wait and see. They couldn't get it over the line. Now, bearing in mind that Sassuolo had a load of players out, including the iconic Domenico Berardi, including the fact that Fabio Grosso absolutely lost his mind last week on the touchline during the win over Fiorentina, so was sent off, so wasn't able to be on the bench today. They came back, they scored a wonderful, wonderful equaliser by Arnaud Loriente. Now, Loriente finished it off, but it was a great passing move to get it done. And so you think, okay, it's all set up for Napoli. They go to Udinese, who are doggedly mid-table this afternoon, and having lost to an inferior team without scoring in the Champions League in the week, Napoli do it all over again, and they managed to make Udinese look like Brazil, really. They were really, really good in the second half, Udinese. They had 2 goals disallowed, one from Nicolo Zaniolo. He did the full going to the stand, heart-shaped celebration to the partner, all the rest of it, before it got chalked off, which was a bit embarrassing for him. And then, in their sort of team of misfits that they have, and Udinese has been one of those clubs for a while, Jurgen Eckelenkamp, who has occasionally looked like he could be a superstar number 10 for various clubs, including Ajax, Hertha Berlin, absolutely pinged one in the top corner with 20 minutes to go from about 20 yards out. And that was the very least that Udinese deserved. But, Conte can talk about injuries, he can talk about tiredness. And in fact, Stanislav Lobotka came back today. But, really, there's no excuse for this. And in any other season, their title defence would be absolutely on the floor. But of course, teams are tripping over each other to give away points. Inter weren't one of those teams this weekend. They went and won at Daniele De Rossi's Genoa, despite a really strong comeback from Genoa from 2-0 down. They got it over the line at 2-1, with Lautaro's second goal turning out to be the winner.
Yeah, I mean, we keep saying we think that Inter are the best team. They've certainly got the best squad.
Yes.
So this may be I keep wanting to say this is a critical moment in the race for the Scudetto, but then next week something else happens, which is great. Of course it is. Meanwhile, Lazio, they won at Parma, and you might say that's nothing remarkable about that. They weren't exactly overcooked with footballers though on the pitch by the end of it.
No, so they ended with 9, Danny. And not just they ended with 9, they went down to 9 and then they took the lead. That was the remarkable thing. They totally outplayed Parma in the first half. But then a couple of minutes before half time, Matteo Zaccagni got sent off, their best player. So already they're in a huge difficulty. And then after Parma get back into the game, as you would expect from there, Toma Basic gets sent off for what I can only describe as a Cristiano Ronaldo elbow. It's a bit like the one in Dublin against the Republic of Ireland. Yeah. Where some people will go, I can't believe that's a sending off these days. But it's just an incredibly stupid thing to do. The Zaccagni sending off was a bit harsh. And I suppose some will argue that, and have argued, that both sending offs were a little harsh for Lazio. But of course, there was the moment where Tijani Noslin scores the winner, having got back into scoring form recently. Absolutely brilliant finish from him. And being down to 9 men and then taking the lead, obviously they went absolutely nuts, and everyone, including Maurizio Sarri, went absolutely nuts at full time.
Yes, of course, you're missing that one key element there. Going down to 9 men, taking the lead away from home. It's almost a football supporter's dream, isn't it? Who's your star of the week in Italy, Andy?
Well, I have a bit of a less love relationship with him, but I've gone for Gift Orban. We're into our Nigerian strikers tonight. Now, Verona,
2 years ago, he was going to be the next Erling Haaland, wasn't he?
Yeah, and then people saw him play, I think. I mean, look, he's a good finisher who has limits outside the penalty box, I think it's fair to say. He went from Lyon to Hoffenheim to Verona in double quick time after leaving Belgian football. And so here he is at Verona. They won their first game of the season last week, leaving Fiorentina as the last team to not win a game this season. Of course, they'd not won for their first 14 games. You think, well, it might be 15th time lucky. If they're going to do it, they have to do it against Verona. They didn't do it against Verona, thanks to 2 goals from Gift Orban, including a stoppage time winner, which is absolutely vital and could finish Fiorentina even at this early stage of the season.
Oh, I think they're wolves, Dandy. They're gone, aren't they? It's not the fact that you look at the gap and you think, well, they could go on a run of games, but the teams above them must pick up more points as well. The gap doesn't automatically come down just because you fluke or hit a bit of form.
I think really, Danny, it's like you say with Wolves, it's their intrinsic hopelessness. You don't believe in their ability
the team's no good.
To be competitive.
And that's a shame, given where Fiorentina were in the European competitions over the past few years. They were showing great promise, and suddenly, for whatever reason, I don't know what the Italian for the wheels have come off, but that seems to be what's happened.
Do you think, Danny, that there could be a situation in which they win the Conference League and go down in the same season? I mean, it's got to happen at some point for some team, hasn't it? Yes, I can see that, Andy, but I still think Crystal Palace will have a lot to say in that Conference League. I mean, they ran up a whole load of chances against Manchester City today. That result doesn't look natural when you look at the XG and the possession stats. City's 3-0 win was not a 3-0 thrashing. Of course, Palace came to here to the Republic of Ireland during the week and absolutely strolled to a win at Shelbourne. My star of the week is familiar to Premier League fans. West Ham fans might want to cover their ears because Gianluca Scamacca these days at Atalanta. Of course, he scored against Chelsea in the week, and then he got 2 today against Cagliari. The winner was a brilliant laugh because he tried a bicycle kick, made an absolute hames, as we say in this part of the world, of that, got up, received the ball again in the same move, and managed to do one of those brilliant shots where you hit your standing leg and deceive the goalkeeper with the ricochet. So Gianluca, not just because of that, but because he did play well against Chelsea as well, is my star of the week in Italy. Incredibly, people, that's the first hour of tonight's show already gone. We've still got 60 minutes to go, and as a special treat, because most of you know that our televised coverage of talkSPORT closes down normally at midnight. So keen are the management to see it, for you to see me and Andy in all of our physical beauty. We'll be continuing on TV into the small hours as well.
Tyson Fury, Floyd Mayweather, Canelo Alvarez. Just hearing these names makes you think money and the hundreds of millions of dollars, pounds or Saudi riyals in boxing. But that's at the top. At the bottom, it isn't quite the same. Even for those on the rise, there's not an awful lot of cash in the boxing world. And if you're just starting out, well, it can be a very costly exercise indeed. But don't take my word for it. Here's the former European champion, talkSPORT's Spencer Oliver.
You're turning professional and you're boxing, let's say, York Hall on a non-televised fight. You have to sell tickets to earn any money, but you have to cover the wages of your opponent as well. So if you don't have the ability to be able to sell enough tickets, you effectively have to pay to fight.
A far cry then from Jake Paul facing Mike Tyson in 2024, when the purse was reported to be around £48 million. But the vast amounts of cash lining the top dog's pockets isn't the norm in a typical fight.
Let's say you're lucky and you get between 5 and 10 grand. You're going to get 10 grand max for that. 10% goes to the trainer, 25% goes to the manager. Then we've got the tax man to pay as well. So we're cutting that money in at least half. So now you've got 5 grand for a 10-week camp. So you're talking about a guy here earning, he might be clearing 500 quid a week. How do you support a family on that? So boxers chase the dream. And, you know, there's probably 2% of them that actually make it.
So say you do make it and you start to rise up the ranks. Strikers Boxing, a training academy, says the mid-tier fighters can earn more, somewhere between £10,000 and £50,000 a fight, depending on record, profile, opponent and popularity of weight class. It's only at the top level does the real cash start flowing in, with the top-tier professionals, i.e. those going for titles, earning 6 figures a fight. Something else you'll have heard of is the terms prize fighter or journeyman. A prize fighter is, as it sounds, someone who picks up fights where they can and gets a nice big check if they win. Journeymen are the fighters who take on up-and-comers, effectively used for experience in the ring. Even if they're going up against a real prospect, a young Anthony Joshua, for example, these guys will be lucky to earn more than 10 grand. So the average boxer isn't as rich as you'd think.
After midnight, we're gonna let it all hang out. After midnight, we're gonna chug, look and shine.
Yeah, one of the real bonuses of when the show goes past midnight is we get to play JJ Cale's song. But it doesn't mean that we lose Tim Vickery. As I said, coming in, welcome everybody, welcome back, I should say, to the second hour of 2 of tonight's edition of Trans Europe Express with me, Danny Kelly, and of course the great Andy Brassell. As I say, the authorities here at talkSPORT decided that Andy and I are so physically interesting and attractive that we're going to continue our coverage on YouTube, smart TVs and the other platforms where you can see us in vision these days. Normally it stops at midnight, but a special treat for you all will carry on to 1 o'clock, which of course means that we're going to be upgraded in the how can we put it, presentability stakes by the ever beautifully turned out and nattily turned out Tim Vickery, who joins us now from South America. Hello, Tim.
How you doing, gentlemen? How you doing? You all right?
Really good. Did you know you were going to be in vision tonight?
No, I don't think I am. Actually, I hope I'm not, because no, I don't even
knowing
work
you,
on
you're
this
not sat there in a
technology.
string vest, are you?
Well, I kind of am, actually. It's very, very warm tonight. Very, very warm. Yes.
Yeah, not a problem we've got in Ireland. I dare say in Newcastle either, Andy.
No.
Tim, let's talk then about the Intercontinental Cup final. You are of the belief that the game between Flamengo and PSG could actually go somewhere to saving this rather now forgotten tournament.
Well, I
Or
think it's
forgotten
probably
in Europe. Forgotten in
yes.
Europe, not in South America.
Indeed, yeah. It could well be the last Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our last hope, because it is dying on its feet. I mean, people in your neck of the woods don't even seem to know that it's even happening.
No.
Now, didn't we have this earlier on in the year with the club? Well, there's this as well. The games in the stadium, there's no one there. There's been no one there. It's been awful. And part of that is because this thing is dependent on the South American fans, and it's expensive. And the Flamengo fans, they've just been up to Lima, which is it's really expensive for it's Rio to Lima, especially with dynamic pricing, y'all. So they've spent a fortune there, and then at the last minute they're supposed to do a trip to Qatar. Well, they've gone through two games. They beat Cruz Azul of Mexico, the CONCACAF champions, 2-1, and then 2-0 over Pyramids of Egypt. I think 7,000 people in the stadium both times. Awful.
Shame.
Awful.
Real shame.
Yes, so, like the message from the stadium is like saying this doesn't matter, which is a shame, because Paris Saint-Germain Flamengo is the best matchup we've had in this, I think, since the turn of the century. Before, the thing really, the gap between Europe and South America really opened up. And I think there's a terrific chance of a game here. On the Flamengo side are the more experienced of the two sides. It's dripping in experience, which could be a problem end of season for them. Andy, how do you think Paris Saint-Germain are approaching this game? Is it an inconvenience, or does it have an importance to them?
It's got a big importance to them, Tim, because if you think about how things have gone under the Qatari regime over the last 14 years, so much of what they've done has been about projection, really. If you talk about snaring the superstars, if you talk about Zlatan, if you talk about making the kit deal with Jordan, all that other stuff, before we get to Messi and Neymar, etc., it's only really, it's always felt as if the football is kind of an afterthought, really. And it's funny that in the post-star era, they've reached this sort of football nirvana, but they were very, very big on spreading the word, on growing the brand, if you like, when they were in the US for the Club World Cup. And they saw that as at least as important off the pitch as it was on it. And, this to them is about extending their brand, is about new markets. So, look, everyone on the playing staff will be more than aware of the fact that this is super important to them. Which is funny, because a lot of European clubs wouldn't feel like that, I think.
Yeah, and they'll also know that they're in for a battle after, because they got beaten by Botafogo in the Club World Cup, and Botafogo played it as if their lives depended on it.
Yes, they
PSG
did.
were a little bit perturbed by the mad celebrations at the end of a group game. So PSG will know that a Brazilian side is there, first of all, to compete. Whether Flamengo can do what Botafogo did, or will want to do what Botafogo did, which was basically hang off their own crossbar like a team of bats, I don't really think so. But they might have to. They might have to because of tiredness. And they've done. It's been grimly efficient in the two games. They haven't really been threatened, but there hasn't been a lot to enthuse about. They've never had to chase the game. In fact, in none of the big games that they played recently, all the knockout games in the Libertadores, the games here, they've never been behind. They've never had to come out and chase. And in the last game against Pyramids, they kind of died a little bit after 35. The high press, that was forgotten after 35. So I'll be interested to see what the rhythm of the PSG game does to Flamengo. I'm a little bit worried about the Flamengo central midfielders, one of whom is Jorginho, the other's Pulgar, a Chilean. I'm a little bit worried about them picking up cards, because I think they'll resort to some dark arts just to try and slow down the rhythm of Paris Saint-Germain. But it should be really interesting. Go on.
I think Tim, whatever happens, they won't have to put up with John Textor cavorting on the pitch afterwards.
No.
Which I think for Nasser Al-Khelaifi is a really big deal. I wanted to ask you actually about another final, about the Argentinian final, because I know you want to talk about Juan Sebastian Veron in the stands, the Estudiantes president. I know you might want to talk about Southampton legend Guido Carrillo and the contribution he made. I really want to start by talking about Fernando Muslera in his 40s and still making a massive contribution and winning another trophy after a really interesting career, because it's funny, he spent so much time at Galatasaray coached by Taffarel, and really they've got a lot in common as goalkeepers. I think most would say Taffarel is a bigger name in the field of goalkeeping, of course, but funnily enough, I think Muslera, a little bit like Taffarel, is someone who didn't allow his mistakes to define him, who was very, very good at getting over absolutely massive clangers and has ended up having an incredible career.
Yes, I wonder whether he's going to have another World Cup. I wonder. I mean, one big difference he would make is that Taffarel played 3 World Cups with barely a mistake, and the brick that Muslera dropped against France in 18, that takes some getting over, I think. But he's come back to South America, could have gone to Uruguay with Peñarol. He was actually born in Argentina, so he's gone back with Estudiantes, and he's playing very, very well. He looks really, really confident. And the Uruguayan goalkeeping position, it's a little bit up in the air. I mean, they're all over the place. The main first choice, a fellow called Sergio Rochette, has spent a lot of time injured. And I haven't seen any official speculation about this, but every time I'm watching it, I'm thinking I could see him, back for one last hurrah, Muslera. So I'll be interested to see what happens in the squad that's announced in the next FIFA dates in March. Yes, in the end, Muslera did come up big. It was Racing with their extraordinary coach, Gustavo Costas, who's like a player. He's dancing around. He's a fan. He's born and brought up in the club. He was a player for years and years and years and years. Come back as a coach, and he's sometimes he's more a mascot than a coach. They were so close. They were 1-0. It was a great goal, late goal as well. And we're in stoppage time, and it's then one of those things that makes you think, why does anyone want to be a coach? Because they give away an absolute needless foul near the goal line. And the veteran Sosa, who you remember, the Prince Sosa, who you remember from Atletico Madrid, dinked it in. And there was Guido Carrillo, who'd had a rumbustious game, as he so often does, to head it home at the far post. And after extra time, then we go to penalties, and it looked like Racing had won on penalties as well. But Muslera turns it round, and Veron, who is banned because of his part in the protests about Rosario Central being handed this title. He is banned from being club president, from being in club presidential positions, so he can't watch it up with Diego Milito, the Racing president. He can't watch it up there. He's in the stands, bounding up and down with all of them and joining in with a chance. And in the end, he had a lot to sing about, because that has absolutely saved Estudiantes' season. Had they not won the title on penalties, they wouldn't be in either of the continental competitions. Now they go into the Libertadores. So from a morale point of view, from a financial point of view, that was really, really important, and it was so close.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by Muslera, but given that Bielsa is the coach of Uruguay, it's just as likely that I'll be called up to the squad as Fernando.
And Bielsa, I remember when he was coach of Argentina, and Caballero was a goalkeeper. And Caballero was getting some criticism. And instead of coming to his aid, Bielsa would say, well, you know what, I don't really know anything about goalkeeping. I don't really know anything about goalkeepers. Exactly. So I rely on other people to tell me,
Tim, thank you very, very much indeed, as always. Great to hear from Tim Vickery there in South America with all the latest from that footballing continent. As he says, Flamengo against PSG, the Intercontinental Championship, doesn't seem to mean anything to us in Europe, but Tim will keep us right across that and so much else, as he always does, right here on Trans-Europe Express, where next we'll be talking about everything that's been going on in France.
Step up to the Oki and win the ultimate VIP darts experience on talkSPORT.
Yeah, the PDC The PDC World Darts Championship is underway, and talkSPORT and Pitch Experiences could be sending you there on 23rd of December. With less than a week left to enter, you and 3 mates could be living it large with platinum seats, fine dining, a complimentary bar, and exclusive access to the 501 Lounge with Russ the Voice Bray. Then it's straight to your prime arena table for the best view in the house. So get ready for an unforgettable Ali Pali Christmas. Here is how to enter. For your chance to win, just text the word darts to 83338. Text costs £2 plus your standard network rate, or you can call 034 342 17508. Lines close at 4 o'clock in the afternoon this Thursday. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. It's 18 plus and UK residents only. To recap, for your chance to win, text darts to 83338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's are at talksport.com. And of course, good luck, everybody. Oh, Andy, I'm just checking the... there's some very little... A late field goal by the Seahawks looks like it's going to rob Philip Rivers of his 44-year-old comeback victory. The Colts are now 18-16 down to the Seahawks with just a few seconds left on the clock. But of course, in American football, that could mean absolutely anything. Next, we're going to talk about France, Andy, and I have got a GCE in French, but it is a half a century old. So you can read the blinking headline.
Okay, I'll go for it in that case. Les titis sont pas mauvais, which means roughly the kids are all right in French, and particularly Parisian, because Titi are like the Parisian kids and the ones that are coming through the youth team, because of course there's been so much talk of this ever since Kylian Mbappe made it part of Messi/Mbappe watch, that he wanted Paris to use its resources better, its natural resources as an industrial scale producer of football talent.
Absolutely.
And there's the sense that post Mbappe, they've started to do that very, very well. And it was a good example of that this weekend, as that they won 3-2 at Metz, in which was, I think, a pretty exciting game, actually. Obviously, at least partially, because PSG were a little bit diminished. But having said that, I think you can say that some of the kids really turned up well. You had Ibrahim Mbaye creating a couple of goals. Eventual winner scored by Desiree Doué, making his comeback as well. But also one for Quentin Ndanju as well, who I thought played really, really well. And the link up between him and Mbaye was just a brilliant moment. See a couple of Parisian teenagers doing it in the top flight. And of course, as Tim was saying in the previous section, this is probably a bit of a plus for PSG, because it gives some rest to some of the big guys going ahead. You know, you look at the bench and those who weren't involved, Krisha Kvaratskhelia not playing from the start in this game as well. So that they should be in a good position for the Club World Cup. And you look at these guys, and whenever these young guys have had to stand in with the very best players in the world, they've done it really, really well, which I think says not just about the talent, but about how it's being developed and how it's being introduced to the first team.
Yeah, the south of France, Andy, Nice, Marseille and Monaco provides us with much entertainment every year. Three of the more volatile clubs in French football. Well, Marseille and Monaco met today. How did they get on?
Well, look, Marseille really needed to win this, because they're a title challenger by the way they've started the season. There's no doubt about that. But they've dropped some needless points, particularly at the Velodrome in the last month or so. They were close to doing it again. And in fact, it looked like Folarin Balogun, the former Arsenal striker, had given Monaco the lead. It was ruled out for offside. The second goal that was ruled out in the second half for offside against Balogun and for Monaco. They went straight up the other end and Mason Greenwood, set up by Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, scored a brilliant goal. He's top scorer in Liga, Greenwood, now with 11 goals, and got Marseille the points, after which Roberto De Zerbi said, it wasn't our best performance and the players look a bit knackered. Of course, they had a massive effort to win their Champions League game at Union Saint-Gilloise in the week, again saved by VAR twice, just as they were in this game. And the disallowing of the first goal, which was scored by Lamine Camara, or would have been scored by Lamine Camara, was particularly controversial because Balogun was offside, but he didn't touch the ball. So there's still a lot of debate going on about that in France this evening. But the boot is really on the other foot now, because Marseille have got themselves back in touch at the top of the league. If I can briefly read you the league table, I'm not gonna tell you who's first, because we'll come to that in a minute.
That's a great story. Yes,
the leaders have got 37 points. PSG got 36, and Marseille 32, level with Lille in fourth, and then there's a gap to Lyon in fifth of 5 points between Lille and Lyon. So look, to actually properly say that they're in this title race, Marseille desperately needed to win this, and just as they did in Belgium in the week, they found a way.
Well, we mentioned that Nice are in free fall, the other team that make up the triumvirate of big clubs in southern France. They lost to what you describe as the leaders, and it's amazing because of the way France closes down the football to allow the Copa to play now, between now and Christmas. We're going to have very, I think, unpredictable leaders at this state come New Year's Day, Andy, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a reshuffle in the French calendar. So normally you have the big teams, just like in the FA Cup third round, enter the Coupe de France in the first week of January before we come back to the league campaign. This year, partly because of PSG being involved in the Intercontinental, it's being done the other way round. So it's the last game before Christmas, the Coupe de France. And so while Lyon, Marseille, Lille, all of those are involved in that, and PSG are off, that meant that we had Ligue 1 shutting down for 2025 today. So Lens this afternoon beating Lille, beating Nice 2-0. Perhaps one of the more predictable results of this current context of Ligue 1. But what it means is Lens will be tucking into their turkey as leaders. Since they've got to the top for the first time in 21 years, they've stayed there. And they've done it from different positions, sometimes going first, sometimes going last. And it's just more brilliant moments from them. 2 goals from Hudson Edouard, who I think is quite indicative of their transfer business this summer. Of course, their big signing was Florian Thauvin, but players who we know of great quality, who'd lost their way a little bit and being absolutely coached to the nth degree by Pierre Sage. And look, it's so exciting having a different team top of the league at Christmas.
Absolutely, and Lyon in fifth place, looking at Pierre Sage and stroking their chins, going, "Oh, I see. So he can coach a football team, can he?" Who's your star of the week in France, Andy?
It's going to be Yann Gaboho, who is a really exciting attacking player. 23 years old, got a couple in Toulouse's 3-0 win away at Paris FC this weekend, and it's amazing, really, because Toulouse, I guess a lot of people thought they would be just treading water in the middle of the table, thanks to guys like Gaboho and, of course, the Englishman Charlie Cresswell, who drew a brilliant save from Kevin Trapp with an overhead kick in this game. They're flying relatively high, so they're in 8th place. They've overtaken Strasbourg, who only drew today, and Monaco, who are down in 9th.
My star of the week may be indicative of my mental state after Tottenham's thrashing at Nottingham. I've already given the prize elsewhere to Christian Eriksen. We've already mentioned Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, but my star of the week in France is Nabil Bentaleb. My goodness, it's a long time since he left Spurs. He played in an amazing game. Auxerre 3, Bentaleb's Lille 4. Both sides finished with 9 men. The latter 2 red cards came from not the usual handbags, as people call it, but a proper fight on the pitch. And during the course of the game, Romain Perraud of Lille, of course, another ex-Southampton superstar, spanked in an absolute belter. Auxerre 3, Lille 4. Nabil Bentaleb is my star of the week in France. Rushing towards the finishing line now, but still a lot to get through here on Trans-Europe Express, including over the next 15 minutes. We'll talk about some of that Champions League action that you no doubt heard here on talkSPORT during the week. It's your home of live football. OK, let's talk about the Champions League now here on Trans Europe Express. We'll review what happened during the week. And then, Andy and I, it's a good time to take a deep breath and look at who's liable to be in the top 8 come when that moment comes, and who's liable to be in the punishment round to have to qualify for the last 16. I say this because we now have a month's gap. Well, it's more than a month. It's a 6-week gap between the games that you no doubt saw on the television or heard here on talkSPORT on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the final couple of games which happen in the last week and a half of January. I suppose, Andy, the most eye-catching result was the one that happened in Milan, where Liverpool, despite all of their tribulations this season, took on powerful Inter side and beat them.
Yeah, it's the sort of mugging that Inter would have done to other teams in Champions League seasons past, which I thought was quite interesting. And really, in the last 2 games, Inter, who had looked like Champions League Inter, conceding no goals, spreading their wings when they needed to, have been done 2 match days in a row. First by Atletico Madrid right at the end, and then Liverpool not quite as late as they were in Madrid, but nevertheless these are 2 relatively costly ones for Inter. And I think in terms of Liverpool, it was as perfect an away performance as you could wish for, really, in the Champions League. Not something perhaps that we're used to from them, but absolutely perfect, and something that they desperately needed, because this season's league stage results in the Champions League have been way off what they were last season, when they're absolutely imperious at this point last season. Of course, we've said before, and we could say again, a lot of good did that do them in the end, because they went out in the last 16 to a really outstanding, by that point, PSG side, which they certainly weren't at the start of the league stage. But whether Liverpool will make the top 8 or not, I don't know. But it saved them getting in any sort of extra drama that they didn't really need in their season.
And just up the road, though, an equally surprising result, you might think, and one that I think, because it's propelled Atalanta into the top 8, threatens the progress of several English clubs, was Atalanta's victory over Chelsea. Yeah,
and I think Atalanta saw the door ajar and they just went for it, didn't they? I mean, Chelsea looked very, very comfortable in the first half, and then Atalanta, who've been a little bit up and down under Raffaele Palladino, and understandably so, because he inherited a team with a few issues on and off the pitch from Ivan Juric. It seems as if he's sort of building them into some sort of elite cup team, really. I mean, I don't think it's a given at all. It's far from a given that they're going to reach the Champions League places again, which they've always challenged for in recent years. In this domestic season, you think they won heavily in the Coppa Italia against Genoa, then lost to Verona, which no other team had done this season last weekend. And then they go and beat Chelsea off the back of that. So they look a different team in cup competitions. I thought Gianluca Scamacca, we talked about him earlier, and you highlighted him earlier for his run of games and his run of goals. He's also playing really, really well in terms of a target man. I guess that will be frustrating to West Ham fans. They'll look at him and think, you know, here's a guy who can hold the ball up as well as anyone that you can think of, really, off the
just
top
didn't
of your
happen
head.
For him in East London, did it?
No, not the only striker that's been the case for at West Ham. You think, you know, Nicholas Füllkrug went straight from a Champions League final to E20, and then it hasn't worked out for him at all, and goodness knows what his value is or isn't these days. But Atalanta they really fell a little bit short in last season's Champions League, the way they lost to Club Brugge, and for that reason, they will want to particularly avoid the punishment round, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, before we get on to who is going to be in that punishment round and who has already avoided it, worth noting that Ajax won a topsy-turvy game in the far eastern parts of Europe, but they won 4-2 at Karabag, and the last team to pick up a point in this year's Champions League.
It's a remarkable thing to say about Ajax, isn't it? And really, it all came right when Kasper Dolberg took the ball by the horns, and really the beneficiary of an injury to Wout Weghorst scored the opening goal. Oscar Glock, who I think is destined for bigger things.
He's probably their best player now, isn't he?
He is. I mean, whether that will be at the end of this season or whether it's a bit too soon, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Ideally, I think Ajax would have liked him to have a bit more of a chance to prove himself in the Champions League. You know, this isn't going to get them anywhere in terms of qualifying for the next round, but just a monkey off their back in what has been a regularly humiliating season.
Okay, Andy, those are the results. Let's talk about where we are. I say we've got this 6-week gap now. The games that will decide who goes through and who goes into the so-called punishment round and those who go out the tournament happen on the 20th and 21st of January. And then the following week, all the games, I'm sure it's the horror of the television companies, happen the same day, the 28th of January. One thing is already pretty certain, Arsenal are going to qualify. In fact, it's incredible to think that the teams in 6th and 7th place, because of their goal difference, they won't catch Arsenal anyway, no matter what happens. So they're through. Last season, we saw several very big clubs leaving it very late in this. They haven't made that mistake this time round, except, Andy, I guess, lurking right on the bubble of not qualifying at all, Napoli with just their 7 points and in 23rd place. If they were to falter and say Benfica and Athletic Club were to pick up their form, Eintracht, who've got some good players, if they were to pick their form up, Napoli are the biggest club probably in danger of not going through at all.
Yeah, they are. And I guess this is life with Antonio Conte for you, isn't it? I mean, they lost 2-0 in the week in Benfica, and they were really outplayed. Really, really poor. They've got to fix their away form if they're going to sort out their season, and that's something that Antonio Conte made plainly clear after a performance that he largely absolved away at Udinese today. Whether he should have or not, I guess depends on your view of how you should approach a team psychologically that's put in two such poor performances and not scored a goal in 2 away games this week. I guess there are some that would argue that it's not the worst thing for Napoli's season, because it would be a bit embarrassing if they didn't make the top 24. On the other hand, it clears the decks for them to go and do their stuff in Serie A. You know, they're still very much a contender to retain their title. I think that would be the most Conte ending to Conte at Napoli, for them to fall flat on their faces in the Champions League, but go on to win Serie A again. And when you think that Juventus are going to continue to be involved, you think that Inter are going to continue to be involved, Roma are going to continue to be involved.
Crucially, not AC Milan, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I guess that's Conte for you at this point, as David Cartledge will put it. He's a 1 game a week manager, and he very much is. You know, that's his career. But I think when you look at the top 8, Danny, I think Atalanta are going to stay there. You look at their remaining games, and they've got a home game against Athletic and a away game against Union Saint-Gilloise. So 5th at the moment. I don't think it's off the table that they end with 19 points. Yeah. So I think you look at the teams that are in there at the moment that aren't going anywhere. I would say Arsenal, Bayern, PSG, City, Atalanta. That leaves the ones on the bubble being Inter, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Liverpool, Dortmund, Tottenham, Newcastle and Chelsea. So that's the top 13. So I would say I think Real Madrid will get there. I think you look at their last couple of games and the fact they've had the kick out the backside of losing to Manchester City. They get there. I think Inter get there. And I think that Atletico Madrid have got a slip in them. So I would say the 8th of the top 8 will be either Borussia Dortmund or Newcastle.
Andy, how can you say that Borussia's still got to play Spurs? Which means if you're right, it will leave Juventus and Barcelona floating in the punishment round, and 3 of Liverpool, Tottenham, Newcastle, and Chelsea. There'll be a very big English representation in that round of 16 qualifiers. But to be fair, Andy, of course, we saw with Paris Saint-Germain last season, being in the punishment round doesn't necessarily end your either interest in or favouritism for the tournament, because you could argue that was where Paris finally picked themselves up and said, come on, we better make a fist of this, and off they went, so it's not perfect.
It fed their momentum. I think it's fair to say that.
It's not perfect for the Premier League clubs who've got lots of games, one or two more perhaps than some of the other leagues, but there's going to be some very big teams and a lot of English teams, I think, in that gang between 9th and 24th.
I think that's it, Danny. When it turns from playoff to punishment round is entirely dependent on the sort of draw you get. I mean, if we look at the teams who would be the non-seeded ones as it stands, you've got Copenhagen with Benfica just behind them, so I think Benfica are a possibility to get in that 24, as you said. You've got, say, 24 Copenhagen, 23 Napoli, Karabag at 22, who I think have played pretty well, give or take that Ajax game, PSV Eindhoven, Bayer Leverkusen, Monaco, Galatasaray, Juventus. I mean, how many of those would you really want? Or how many of those are not just an inconvenience, but a team that could actually knock you out?
They're all a problem.
Most of them are the latter. Yeah.
PSV can do anything under Peter Bosch. Karabag is a difficult journey. There is, I guess you'd say, looking at their performance in London recently against Spurs, that Copenhagen are not the strongest, but there's a whole group of teams there, none of whom you would want to draw, which makes it all so much more interesting for those of us watching from the sidelines. And don't forget, as always, many of those games, when they start again in January and then into the qualification round and then into the last 16 itself, we have huge coverage here on talkSPORT. Usually 3, 4 or 5 matches a week from the Champions League. We'll give you all the details as we get a bit closer to those. That club competition closes down, though, now for the next 6 weeks over the Christmas and New Year break. Of course, if anything happens to any of these teams that makes a material difference, we'll let you know first here on Trans Europe Express. Yeah, there's NFL action later this morning where you can listen to the Minnesota Vikings at the Dallas Cowboys live on talkSPORT 2 just after our show finishes at 1 a.m. That's live NFL on talkSPORT 2 just after 1 a.m. Andy, we've got about 6 or 7 minutes to go around the leagues. I was hoping to squeeze in some Europa League and Conference League stuff as well. Let's just say that the French teams are doing very well in those. But let's start in Turkey, and huge speculation surrounding View from the Lane, Trans-Europe Express favourite Mauro Icardi.
Yeah, he's had quite a week, has Maurito. Now, of course, there's been growing speculation about him in the Turkish press for a while because he's not been starting. It was difficult for him when he came back from that ACL injury. A, because there was Victor Osimhen, and B, because there was, excuse me,
bless you, Andy.
Clearly a change in terms of the way Okan Buruk wanted to go about things, which was that he didn't really want to play both of them up front at the same time. And if one of them's going to play, it's clearly going to be Osimhen. Now, we all know Mauro Icardi's out of contract at the end of the season. You had the vice president of Galatasaray setting ears aflame by going, as it stands, it is the end of Icardi at the end of this season, which is factual because he's out of contract at the end of the season. But the way he put it, I think, set people's teeth on edge a little bit. There was talk that recently, as he hadn't been that happy about being left out, that maybe the club would even seek to shift him in January. And then there's been the suggestion in the last day or two that maybe he's even ready to accept a pay cut in order to stay, because we know he's had a great time there and he's kind of reinvented himself. So I think it was notable that after all that, he came on towards the end of the game at Antalyaspor, where they won quite comfortably 4-1, a couple of goals for Leroy Sané, and this as well as one for Osimhen. And he scored the fourth goal with exactly the sort of surgical finish that you expect from Mauro Icardi, from an assist from Leroy Sané. And after that, obviously, put some poetic stuff about he who speaks last speaks the longest, or some of that faux philosophical stuff. Anyway, that is a footballer's way of saying, "Shut your face. I just want to get on with playing." And I think if there is a chance that he accepts a lesser role, and of course that cuts his wages, I think is really interesting, and it'd be a really, really nice finish to his European career as well. Although obviously from this perspective, we'd probably quite like to see him in the Premier League.
Sure, of course we would. It's good to have a week where we are not talking about gambling bans in Turkey. Portugal, big wins for the expected big wins for Sporting and Benfica. Porto play tomorrow, which takes us on to the Netherlands, Andy, where, in a game that would many years be a title decider, Ajax, looking semi-competent this week, beat Feyenoord.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was a title decider in that it helped PSV extend their lead at the top to
see what you did there. Very
9
clever.
Points. So a different kind of title decider. In fact, PSV were involved in the most Peter Bosch of games. They beat Heracles 4-3 yesterday. They had a really good go at throwing it away and eventually managed to win the game. But Ajax Feyenoord was really interesting yesterday because, of course, it was the calm after the storm. Firstly, because they got that Champions League monkey off the back in the week. And secondly, because, of course, it was the first home game since the one against Groningen had been abandoned. They ended up playing all but the first 6 minutes of that behind closed doors, of course, and they won that game 2-0 in the end. But there's been a partial stadium ban, so where the F-side ultras usually stand behind the goal.
The pyrotechnic gang, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That was closed, so you only had 3 sides of the ground open. But there was still good Classica atmosphere. There's no doubt about that. 2-0 to Ajax, and 2 really great goals with a blue touch paper lit by Davy Klaassen, who smashed one in from miles out. And
Not sure, Andy, in a ground where pyrotechnics have been such a big issue, you should be saying to people lighting the blue touch paper.
Possibly lighting the fake touch paper, maybe. I don't know, but it was not brilliant football, but decent. They look competent. They look as if they've got the general principles of wanting to keep the ball now, and so maybe Fred Grimm is using these Champions League games now they're out of contention to actually work on the collective, and they've got a few wins in a row now. 4 wins in a row now in all competitions. Ajax up into third, and it's lifted a bit of the heavy mood. On the other hand, Feyenoord are getting it in the neck. Now, you had former Feyenoord player Pierre van Hooijdonk, who of course was never backwards in coming forwards, having a bit of a go at them on Dutch TV afterwards, and particularly the skipper, Anis Hadj-Moussa, who got it in the neck from his own coach, Robin van Persie, going back a couple of weeks. And Van Hooijdonk tore a strip off him for not defending without the ball, gave him the full Mo Salah, if you like. And so how Feyenoord respond to this and how Van Persie responds to this will be interesting.
And Andy, on the Conference League and the Europa League, I think you would want to make the point that, they're all still very much up in the air. A couple of goals for Evan Ferguson for Roma during the week. But
yes,
that French clubs, top of both leagues.
Yeah, and that's a massive boost in terms of coefficient as much as anything else. Because
exactly.
I think if you look at one point, it was really close between France and the Netherlands. Not so much now. So it looks like the distribution of Champions League and Europa League / Conference League places will remain as it's been. Of course, the Netherlands has done really well out of the Conference League in terms of UEFA coefficient points in recent years. But France now stretching its league, which is a big thing. So really it's about at the next stage, a battle between the Netherlands and Portugal to see who gets the most Champions League places.
Andy, it's been an absolute joy, as it always is with you on a Sunday night. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Likewise.
With no Champions League football, Andy will probably stay at home for a few days now. I'll be back tomorrow. Well, today now, isn't it? Of course, I'll be back in about 12 hours' time on H&J to review everything that's happened in the Premier League this weekend. In our poll, over half of you think that Xabi Alonso will still be the Real Madrid coach on February the 1st. I'm not sure that was a position that most of you would have occupied even a few days ago. Coming up next here on talkSPORT is the mighty, mighty Paul Ross with Extra Time. Just remains for me to say thank you for listening. God bless you all and good night.